It's not 5 o'clock, and they don't care. Welcome to Wine to 5. Entertainment, education, and everyday drinking for everyday people. Your hosts are Valerie Caruso and Stephanie Davis, two wine educators who don't need a clock to know when to pour that next glass.
All right, listeners, we have a special episode for you today, and this is all about the Cru Artisan College experience. Now, first, you might be asking, what is that? It was developed by Banffy Vintners, and the college is actually in its 5th year. And as it currently stands, every year, the education sessions are led by Italian winemakers. These winemakers are part of the Cru Artisan Collection of Banffy, a special category of handcrafted special wines.
And the experience takes place in 3 cities. And in 2018, it came to Denver before heading to Napa and then Austin. And now we're bringing a piece of it to you through this audio in case you want to take it yourself in 2019. And we got so lucky that Val had the opportunity to take and drive the short distance from Colorado Springs to Denver and get some extraordinary interviews and taste some amazing Italian wines. And that is what we're going to share.
It was so nice to have an opportunity to take something like this and not have to get on a plane for a change, because most of what we have to do, Steph, we have to get on a plane to do. So it came to a city near us. We took the opportunity to interview the winemakers and gain a lot of factoids. So this episode's going to have a lot of factoids. It's got embarrassing wine stories. It's got 4 interviews for you guys. And there is a programming note here because we couldn't interview everybody. There was just not enough time and just not enough episode length to accommodate that. But we will include all the producers' information in the blog. So this no way reflects that some of the sessions were more important than others. So please don't take it that way. We weren't playing favorites, but we did want to cover some of the areas that we've not really discussed in depth on the show over the years.
And everybody, I just want to say that Val did such an awesome job. And this is really an exciting, I loved these interviews. So I know you guys will too. So pause the audio, pour yourself some Italian wine, and enjoy this audio experience.
First, we talk with Lars Light. He is the Director of Trade Development for Banffy Vintners and the Director of Cru Artisan Wines. Now, we call him the ultimate Banffy resource, and we'll put his entire bio into the blog, but what he did give us here as the brains behind the Cru Artisan College is the origins. And he tells us some really great stories about the translating and how he got his language skills. Again, like Steph said, this is going to have a lot of embarrassing wine stories in it, and it all begins with a bottle of his uncle's homemade wine.
I am here with Lars Light, and we are actually pre-Cru Artisan College. My coffee hasn't kicked in yet either, so we're right here at breakfast this morning. Lars is the Director of Trade Development for Banffy Vintners and the Director of Cru Artisan Wines. He is the ultimate Banffy resource as well. He serves as the founder and dean, and most importantly, the translator of this Cru Artisan College adventure that I am personally going to take today. Lars's background is in political science and journalism, and it eventually led him to become the Director of Communications for Banffy Vintners. And that was as a sales representative almost 30 years ago.
30, yeah, more than.
Over 30 years ago, yeah. And Lars is not only the expert on Banffy and Italian wine and food, but also wine industry markets in general. So welcome.
Thank you. Wonderful
to
be here.
Thank you for taking time. I know you got a lot of setup to do.
Oh, my pleasure.
We're going to have some fun here this morning. And first, what I want you to talk about is what it is that Cru Artisan Wines represent. Just give us a little refresher. We've heard about them before, but what is it that Cru Artisan represents for Banffy?
Well, Valerie, Cru Artisan represents that handful of wines in our portfolio that are really the gems of the portfolio, the handcrafted wines. The Banffy Vintners portfolio is known for having wines that really run a gamut from everyday value to jewels, to gems. And it's sort of a challenge to talk about both of them at the same time. So Cru Artisan is the opportunity to just focus on the gems, on the handcrafted special wines in our portfolio.
All right. And the Cru Artisan College was your brainchild, correct?
Yeah, it was sort of my my way of getting out of having to do 5 different trips to translate for visiting winemakers. I figured I'd bring them all at once and get it over with.
Okay, so that was kind of like a marketing idea. It's
yeah, in a sense, the Mariani family, the proprietors of Banfi, are very firm believers in education, giving back to the community and educating, because communicating about our wines, about the styles of wines, the wines available, is very important.
Now, before I even go on, how did you end up at Banfi?
I was a young journalist in upstate New York, the Oneonta Daily Star. Liked the job, but wasn't quite sure that a career in journalism was meant for me. So I was kind of poking around, looking at different opportunities, and thought that, hey, wouldn't it be great to be in parlay journalism into public relations, involve my writing and communicating. And Banfi actually had, when I was still in high school, had moved into their headquarters right down the road from where I grew up. And so I reached out to some folks that I knew, and I said, hey, what's going on in communications at Banfi? Do they have room for a young upstart? And I was told, no, we're good in communications, but if you want to sell, we can always use salesmen. And I said, well, I thought about it. I didn't really want to be a salesman, but not a bad way to get a foot in the door. And sales, after all, is communication.
That's right.
So it was a start. That was March 1st, 1986.
Wow. And you guys tend to stay with Banfi a long time. Must be a great company to work for, obviously.
It's a wonderful family to work for.
Yeah.
Wonderful family, great wines. I always say that what I love about the wines that we represent is they're not just wines that these families want to sell. They're wines that these families that make them want to drink.
That's nice.
Enjoy.
I like that. And today, what we're going to be doing, we're on the first leg of your Cru Artisan College tour. After here, you're going to Napa and then on to Austin, correct? And we're going to go through 5 regions. So I'm really excited about the regions we're going to go through today. And of course, you'll probably hear more about that later, but we're going to talk about various styles of wine. There's sparkling, there's the Lambrusco, there's a Langhe sparkling as well.
Correct.
There's a Brunello, there's a Amaro at the end, and some Marsala. It's going to be a lot of fun. But what do you think is going to surprise us most without giving too much away?
Wow. I think that we're really digging deep in each of the 5 seminars that we're offering. The Lambrusco is sort of just for fun.
Yeah.
But everything else there is really digging deep and analyzing different wines. So I think there's going to be a few ahas. So the first seminar on our Alta Longa denomination is something that a lot of people aren't really familiar with.
Right.
So I think that's going to be an eye-opener for them. Same thing with Colline Terramane. It's a DOCG of Montepulciano d'Abruzzo, and a lot of people are used to Montepulciano d'Abruzzo coming from being very good jug wine, very good value wine.
Right.
Here you have a world-class wine made from Montepulciano. That'll be a little bit of a shocker. And I always find that some of the biggest wows come from the Marsala.
Oh, yeah.
Because everybody thinks about, Marsala equals chicken Marsala, or they think about it as a cooking wine, and they're used to seeing the dusty bottles on the shelf or in grandma's cabinet.
Right.
But we're going to be tasting some world-class Marsalas that can rival sherries or ports and stand right up there, and if not even be more appropriate on certain occasions for dining.
It sounds to me then there are going to be a lot of kind of misconceptions, and I hate to overuse the term myths busted today because, going back to Lambruschi, there are all different kinds of perceptions about Lambrusco and how complex it is or is not.
Correct.
Montepulciano d'Abruzzo is the same thing. You've got that DOCG now, and the name was just changed like a couple years ago. So I've got a question for Enrico about that as well.
Good.
And then when it comes to Marsala, people don't realize there's like this matrix of styles and colors and sweetness, and it's not the stuff that we had in our fridge in the 80s that we bought off the grocery store shelves.
No.
So there's all these things to learn about these wines. So
Correct.
I'm hoping you guys will have a matrix today.
I have no doubt. Even with the Brunello. I mean, everybody knows Brunello, but how much do you really know about it? And why is it so special? And we're literally going to get down to the components of it.
I'm excited. I'm excited to hear that. And another question for you, as far as the winemakers. We got to meet some of the winemakers last night.
Yes.
And have some beer with them, and you're their translator, which is great. And so I'm listening to your Italian, I'm listening to your pre-brief, so to speak. Hey, it's hot, you don't have to wear ties, and I'm kind of giggling. Tell me about your Italian skills, where you picked them up, how you've kind of fostered them over the years.
Well, despite my Teutonic surname, which is from my father's Austrian German side, my mother was Italian, from outside, a small town outside of Rome. And so growing up Italian American, I grew up like most Italian Americans did. My vocabulary was limited to food and swear.
Yes.
But I always had a passion for Italian and a passion for languages. So I studied Spanish and Latin in high school. And when I got to university, I finally took up Italian and had the opportunity to visit Italy on a exchange trip. And while I was there, I got to visit some of my mother's cousins in the small town outside of Rome. And when I left them, I found myself homesick, but not homesick for my home in suburban Long Island. I found myself homesick for a place I never knew was home before.
Yeah.
So Italy grabbed my heart. And that's one of the reasons that I really wanted to work for Banfi, was to have that Italian connection and use it. And so 2 years in, or 3 years in, I was assigned to an Italian-speaking boss. So I got a lot of practice that way, which helped a lot. And then in the mid-1990s, I got to move to Italy. I was on an assignment there for 3 years, and that helped tremendously.
Oh.
That's, I think, when I went from being conversant to semi-fluent.
Yes. You will never forget that an eggplant is feminine when an 84-year-old woman just makes a point of it. Melanzana per favore. Una, sì, una è femminile. So until you're yelled at in the grocery store, at the market, I mean, those are the learning lessons. That's
Correct.
how you learn, is being immersed in that,
Correct.
That language.
Italian doesn't have a lot of rules, but the rules are basic and easy to follow, and you have to follow them.
Yes. And an eggplant is feminine.
Yes.
And finally, one more question that we ask all of our guests on our show. Wine industry is serious, it's business, but it's also enjoyable. It's art, it's science, and there are always things that happen that make us go, oh my God. But you live to tell about it another day, and we've all had those stories, and I know you've got some. Could you tell one, please?
Well, I think that one of my most personal embarrassing stories was being with those relatives in Italy. My uncle made a homemade it was sort of like a sparkling frascati, I guess is the closest way I can describe the wine. The young, fresh, fruity wine made from white grapes, made from Malvasia di Candia. And he would bottle it early on the spring on the right day when the moon was in the right position, and the wine would come out sparkling. And we always had a trick because it was homemade, you never knew what you were going to get from any given bottle. Some were more sparkling, others were less. And so they had this trick back in the day in the 90s. Of course, in Italy, we still had the lira. And there was 100 lira coin. And they said if you held the lira coin against the seam of the bottle, when you opened it, the bottle wouldn't overflow. Now, I don't know why, and I doubt that it was true, but we practiced it. And it always seemed to work for me, except for this one time when we were sitting around and all my cousins were like, oh, Lorenzo, they call me. Lorenzo's in the wine business. He's going to open this special bottle of wine. And I grabbed my 100 lira coin out and I put it on and I started to open the wine and the wine started to go over. And so I didn't want to mess up my aunt's floor, even though the bottle was already dripping. So I started to run for the window with this bottle in my hand. And of course, running on a nice, clean Italian floor, I slipped and went right on my backside, still holding and clutching the bottle, though. I didn't lose
Must protect the wine.
the rest of the bottle. That was a little embarrassing in front of the expectations of my family, but thank God it was only family,
And you
which
didn't
can
get
always
hurt?
be forgiving. And I didn't get hurt.
And you didn't spill the wine.
That's the most important part of it all.
Oh my gosh, Lars. Well, thank you so much for taking time this
Thank you,
morning. I
Valerie.
know you've got a busy day. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to talking with the winemakers afterwards. Hopefully I can grab a couple of them.
Absolutely.
And I really wish you a very good course today. Good luck.
Thank you. I wish
say,
you a lot of
bocca al lupo.
learning. Grazie e crepi. You can explain what all that means later.
I can do that later, yes. I don't know if we've talked about that one on the show yet either, but we do have some Italophiles that listen, and we do have some listeners in Italy as well. So,
Fantastic.
grazie tanto.
Grazie a lei. Buona giornata.
Buona giornata.
So that was pre-experience. Let's see how fresh everyone is when these interviews continue 9 hours and many bottles later.
That's right, Steph. We did record this before the thing kicked off, before these guys went over to the school and set up. So Lars and I interviewed in the morning over coffee. Well, at the end of the day, after everybody got back to the hotel, I should also point out that the hotel's air conditioning was broken. So the lobby was a little bit loud because there was no air in the room. So everybody was downstairs trying to be cool. So here it is after a long day, but I'm going to tell you something. Cru Artisan was very well organized, very well run, and we started with Alta Longa, and we're going to talk about what that is in a minute, and then we ended with Marsala and a Fernet Amaro stuff that you would have absolutely adored, and we have the story behind that as well. But we start with Alberto Lazzarino, and he is the directing winemaker at Banfi Piemonte, and he sat down with me right before we all left to dinner. So again, a little bit loud in the lobby, but he's going to give us a nice interview about the bubbly that he's talking about. And for those of you that have not heard of Alta Longa, this is a pretty special thing. So keep in mind, there are translations happening here. So we really did try to pull the English out as best as we can to give you guys an idea of what's happening with Alta Longa. I'm here with Alberto Lazzarino, directing winemaker of Banfi Piemonte. Alberto Lazzarino has served as a principal winemaker at Banfi Piemonte since 2002 and is a graduate of the prestigious Agricultural University of Alba, one of Italy's and the world's leading enology schools. Lazzarino is also the president of Piemonte region of Italy's Association of Winemakers and Enologists, where he also serves as the organization's national advisor. Welcome. And with me again is Lars Leik, because he's translating, because you all know my Italian, you've heard it. But what we're going to talk about today is Alta Longa. We're going to talk about the spumante, which are sparkling wines, you guys know, of Alta Longa. And this is a relatively new DOCG. Tell us a little bit about it, the regulations and what has to happen for a wine, the kind of grapes, type of production, tank versus metodo classico.
Okay. So Alta Longa is the high point of the diamond for sparkling wines in Piedmont. It represents our highest expression of quality for metodo classico, which means wines fermented in the bottle. So we can only use two different types of grapes.
Pinot Nero e Chardonnay.
Pinot Noir and Chardonnay.
In purezza or in blend.
Either on their own or as a blend. And every producer can choose the style, how they want to do it. So clearly when you use 100% Pinot Noir, you have wines that are a little more austere. They are a little more apt to age well. Instead, with Chardonnay, you have wider, bigger wines that are more full, a little more fruity style, but normally they don't age as well. And a blend of those two grapes kind of becomes the winemaker's game of how he can blend them and see what they become. Alta Longa is a DOCG that is relatively young. It obtained the DOC in 2002 and the DOCG in 2008. Even though the denomination is relatively young, behind it, it has a very, very long tradition of sparkling wines fermented in the bottle in Piedmont. Remember that sparkling wines fermented in the bottle were born in Italy in the 1800s. Alta Longa was proposed, why? To have the technique of grapes coming from our specific area. When we made sparkling wine from Chardonnay, we used to get it from outside of our region. We wanted to grow these grapes in our region and make sparkling wine fermented in the bottle from our region. Being a very young denomination, we decided to make regulations that were very strict to reflect the seriousness of our venture. So you can basically base it on three very strong arguments compared to other DOCs. Alta Longa, the vines must be planted a minimum of 250 meters above sea level, and that's a characteristic that we only have as a DOC, as a regulation, as a denomination. It must always carry the vintage year on the label.
That's something that's very different than regular sparkling wine. Correct. And a lot of it is non-vintage, or what we call multi-vintage. It has to have the vintage on the label.
And that's an important quality statement.
Okay.
Our philosophy is always following the great wines of the world and the great sparkling bottle fermented wines of the world. You must see the variation from vintage to vintage in the wine. So that's why we don't want to have a non-vintage. We don't want to have a blend, a standardized wine, combining different vintages. We don't want a wine that's the same every year. That's a different philosophy. We want a philosophy that all the great wines of the world share.
Okay.
So, needing the vintage year, it means that every vintage will reflect what Mother Nature offered us that particular year. And that's, who might like one vintage more than another. Some vintages will be more adapted for aging. Some will be more adapted for drinking younger. That's more or less the philosophy of all great wines.
Yeah.
Another point that distinguishes us from many other DOCs is that to make an Alta Longa, it must be aged on the lees a minimum of 30 months. And that's a long time. It's a long time in contact with the yeast. And it means you're going to end up with wines that are capable of long aging. And it also means that who produces this wine needs to have very high quality base wine to be able to survive that long aging period.
Okay.
Currently, 30 months is the minimum. To make a Reserva, you need 36 months. Now, one of our ideas is to soon change the DOC rules and to move the rules from 36 months for a Reserva to 60.
Hai scritto la disciplinare?
No.
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 Okay.
Il disciplinare oggi recita 36 mesi.
Oh.
So today it says 36 months
Stiamo lavorando
for the
come
Reserva.
consorzio
What
per
we're moving
aumentare
toward is to go to 60 because we've seen that it has the potential to sustain that 60 months.
Stiamo lavorando per quello.
That's what we're working towards.
And there are 4 different styles. You have the Alta Longa Reserva, Alta Longa Rosato, Alta Longa Rosato Reserva. So 4 different styles you guys can get.
Inoltre è
Yes,
possibile
it's possible to have those 4 types, and you can also make a Blanc de Noir,
Okay.
a Blanc de Blanc, or a blend.
Okay, and because we are running tight on a reservation here, we're going to. So we talked about the styles, we talked about the grapes. I did notice the disciplinare does say that you can add up to 10% others,
Si può aggiungere fino a 10%.
non-aromatic.
90%
90% minimum must be either Pinot or Chardonnay.
Okay.
10% is other varietals, but non-aromatic.
Okay, so I did see that, and that means no Riesling, no Gewürztraminer, nothing like that. But before we go, Alberto, do you have a funny wine story, an embarrassing wine story, something that will make our listeners laugh? Scherzando.
Vita lavorativa.
So-
Quando facciamo presentazioni di Alta Langa.
So when we were first starting to
Ogni
present,
tanto mi chiedono di sciabolare, no? Per fare vedere-
when we were first starting to present Cuvero and the Alta Longa, every once in a while people ask me, well, can you saber a bottle?
E-
And it's happened to me to try to saber
Guardate,
the first shot.
colpo viene,
Boom, it comes out great. One time, boom, the whole bottle exploded.
Excellent. Excellent.
Panico.
I was in panic. I was in sheer panic.
I'm sorry, è la prima volta che mi capita.
This is the first time it happened, but I was forgiven. I took a second bottle
E sciabolando con il bicchiere.
and I sabered with the stem of a
E
glass.
per fortuna.
And fortunately, that one came out perfect.
Oh, bravo.
So I redeemed myself.
Tremendo.
That's a
It was
great
tremendous.
story. That is a great story. Well, I'm sorry that we had to cut this short because you guys have had a long day,
Yeah.
and I've held you here, and you've been so patient. So, grazie molto.
Grazie a voi.
tanto.
Grazie
Thank
a
you
lei.
so
Thank
much,
you.
and we're going to go ahead and end this right here.
Fantastico.
Fantastico. Thank you.
Okay, Val, you have to tell us 2 things. What was it like tasting Piedmonte's tip of the diamond when it comes to Spumante? And describe Alberto's face when he was sharing his explosive, embarrassing wine story.
You know, Steph, I have to tell you, this was another one of those learning experiences that you gain so much more from in person, right? So kicking off the day with this, every time I think of Alta Longa now, this was the first session of the day, I would think of sitting in that, and oh, by the way, beautiful venue. And we're going to mention later on where this thing actually was. But I was also sitting next to Suzanne Hoffman, whom you might remember
Right.
from the wine families of Piemonte. So she's a big Piemonte advocate. So I'm sitting next to her, got the iPad open. I got the production disciplinare set up on my iPad. I'm furiously scribbling notes, tasting these beautiful bubblies, and he had the rosés, and it was just one of those experiences you have to have in person. I don't think reading about it does it justice. So I think knowing how the stuff is produced, how every bottle has to have a vintage, knowing those things, it's just a different kind of experience that sets in your brain a different way than if you were just like reading about it. So it's an experience you have to have.
Yeah, well, the interview had a lot of key points and takeaways. So I think people learn a lot about Alta Longa. Very good.
I learned stuff.
Yeah.
I had no idea. And I've got a really great article that talks about the bubblies of Piemonte that I can attach to this blog as well that was written. And Suzanne sent it to me right after this was over. And I'm like, wow, this is like a book. It's great. So we'll definitely have to hook you guys up with that.
Sweet.
But should we move on?
Yes, the next part. Oh, about Abruzzo. I love this one. And it contains history, grape gabs, and pizza wine. So it doesn't really get better than that.
No, it doesn't. And I have to say, full disclosure, Abruzzo, I always say, is the land of my people. So it was really nice to sit down with Enrico and talk about pizza wine, because the first place I encountered Montepulciano d'Abruzzo was in a pizza joint in Ohio. And I had no idea this stuff existed, but it was a larger producer. So he teaches us a few things about this tiny little appellation of the Colline Terramane subregion of the Abruzzo, DOCG. And he gives such great stories with pretty much perfect English. And he does, before we get started, settle a score, because you'll see in his bio that he says Abruzzi. I always say Abruzzo. So the first thing I asked him was, what's the deal? So check it out. I am here with Enrico Cerulli.
Good evening.
Hello. He is
Hi.
the family proprietor of Cerulli Spinozzi. And he's got his family roots in Abruzzi dating back generations. Enrico Cerulli's passion lies in focusing on super quality wines from the Colline Terramane subregion. This is Abruzzi's only DOCG.
Right.
That's an interesting thing right there. And in particular, Cerulli strives to make exceptional wine from Montepulciano grape using 100% DOCG fruit. And we can talk about what that is later. And that you were recently elected president of Colline Terramane Consorzio.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So the first I want to settle a score. La mia famiglia sono di Abruzzi.
Really?
Ma dico Abruzzo.
Yes.
Perché? Why? So my family is originally from Abruzzo. We say Abruzzo. You say Abruzzi. What is the difference?
You can say, of course, both in both the way. Abruzzi in Italian is plural.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes from the fact that in the past, Abruzzo, back to the Roman time, there were more than one Abruzzo. So in the memory of the language, Abruzzi has remained plural. But then after the 60s, the 70s, when Italy was divided in regions, Abruzzi became one region, and so Abruzzo. Now we say Abruzzo because it's only one region.
Okay. Erano tre. See?
Yes.
Yes. So there used to be 3 regions.
Yes.
They were called
Abruzzo Citeriore, Abruzzo Ulteriore, e l'Abruzzo next to the Lazio.
Okay, and there was Molise at one time.
Molise
too.
was
its
even another one.
Okay, so there used to be multiple Abruzzos, which would be Abruzzi plural, but
Yeah.
now there's really only one. So it doesn't matter what you say. One way is just more historic.
Yes, even
And
if
traditional.
it's a so small region.
Yeah.
So we like to make it more complicated.
And we appreciate that. And so one of the things we talked about today, so we tasted your Montepulciano d'Abruzzo DOCG, a Colline Terramane. And what's interesting about this DOCG, we've talked about the DOCGs on the show before, but the Montepulciano d'Abruzzo DOCG was actually created in 2003. Before that, it was a DOC.
Yes, before that, Colline Terramane was a subzone of a DOC Montepulciano area. So
Okay.
the Montepulciano d'Abruzzo is a DOC that you can make in all the region of Abruzzo. But Abruzzo, even if it's so small, is divided in subzones. They are very different one from the others.
Okay.
So Colline Terramane used to be a subzone, has been recognized as subzone as a subzone in 1995. And then after almost 10 years, had the honor and the privilege to be recognized as DOCG. There are only a few in Italy, around 70 in all Italy.
Okay.
But this was the first and till now the only DOCG.
Now, it was only 2 years ago it changed its name.
Yes, actually, the name originally in 2003, the name of the denomination was Montepulciano d'Abruzzo Colline Terramane DOCG.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, the producers, we believe that what makes our wine so special, so unique, is the combination of the grape with the terroir, with the place where we are. So the most important thing is this place, is this small piece of land. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to emphasize putting Colline Terramane before Montepulciano. Okay. So now the name is Colline Terramane, Montepulciano d'Abruzzo DOCG.
So I've been saying it backwards. So it's not Montepulciano d'Abruzzo DOCG Colline Terramane. It's Colline Terramane DOCG Montepulciano d'Abruzzo.
Correct.
Okay. So I learned something today too, guys. So that's really cool.
Thank you.
And just a little point of confusion. I know we've talked about it before, but Montepulciano d'Abruzzo actually uses a grape called Montepulciano. It's not to be confused with the Vino Nobile di Montepulciano di Toscana. The Tuscany, no, that's Sangiovese, totally different. So talk to us a little bit about the Montepulciano grape and let our listeners do a little bit of we call it a grape gab, how it grows best, what it's like in the glass, all those things that you love about the Montepulciano grape.
Yes. First of all, I'm sorry, but I apologize about this confusion. Montepulciano from Abruzzo, Montepulciano from Tuscany. I know that many people get confused. But in Abruzzo, we really have an exception in Europe, or is one of the few wines in Europe that has the same name for wine, that is the same name for grape, as a DOC. Montepulciano is an amazing grape, full of color, very tinctorial, is able to give wines that you can enjoy young, but they are also able to age tenths and tenths. It's a grape that really changes by terroir, but definitely found its best place to grow in Abruzzo. In the Colline Terramane, we tried to give an expression of Montepulciano d'Abruzzo focused on elegance, focused on harmony, focused on enjoyability.
Now, something that I didn't know, you mentioned that the Montepulciano grape was a tintorier. So what that is, we've talked about these before. These are grapes that actually have pink juice.
Yes, the better way to understand it is to come to Abruzzo during the harvest, take a bunch of Montepulciano in your hand and squeeze it. And you will see that the juice will be already pink. It's not the same with other grapes, one among all, Pinot Noir, that is very famous and is a red grape used to make many white wines, champagne, for example.
Right.
So if you squeeze a bunch of Pinot Noir, the juice is white.
Right. Now, I did not know that fell into that category, so I learned something new about that.
And this is behind one of the most traditional wines in Abruzzo, that is Cerasuolo.
Oh, love Cerasuolo.
Cerasuolo is part of the Rosés family, but is really far from what people generally think about rosé. Is not light as a rosé from Provence, instead, but is very, very dark in color. It's like the cherry color.
Yes.
The beautiful dark cherry color.
The first time I had one was in Vinicius in 2010. Really? And I had never had one before, and I didn't go down to Abruzzo to visit my ancestral homeland until the next year, until 2011. So that was wherever I could find it, I drank it. And usually they serve it with a spicy foods like spaghetti alla chitarra.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. But if I must suggest a combination, a pairing, pizza.
Ah.
Have
perfect.
Pizza with Cerasuolo, and then we will talk about.
Now, I don't see a lot of Cerasuolo d'Abruzzo in America.
Not
a lot
really.
of it's not exported.
It's not a big production.
No.
But also, there are not many wineries. Yes.
And even today, you mentioned that 80% of your production is Montepulciano d'Abruzzo, but you do make the Cerasuolo, you do make Pecorino and Trebbiano, the white wines as well.
Yes, actually Cerasuolo is made 100% with Montepulciano d'Abruzzo grape. So our Montepulciano grape is used to make Cerasuolo and Colline Terramane.
Okay.
And then we also grow Trebbiano grape, that is one of the most traditional grapes in Abruzzo, and Pecorino, that is a beautiful, unique type of grape that only you can find in Abruzzo and Marche.
Yes, and it's spelled like the cheese, pecorino.
Yes.
Yes. I'm kind of curious also because a lot of listeners, I'm sure, have run across a Montepulciano d'Abruzzo DOC in the past. There are some mass-produced examples out there, and you'll get them in your pizza place and whatever. But what I want to hear from you is how the Colline Termane is different than a Montepulciano d'Abruzzo DOC off the shelf. So how can you express the Colline Termane version of that wine?
Let me tell you something that a friend of mine used to tell me about my wine, tasting my wine together, enjoying my wine together, that I think it could be true for the Colline Termane wine in general. So he told me once that my wine has muscles, but not like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Okay.
More like Jennifer Lopez.
Okay.
You know, this was this image I always bring with me, because even if it was a joke, of course, but tells something about our idea of Montepulciano. Strong, but also elegant, also harmonic. So this is what we are trying to do in the Colline Termane area, and we, in my family, in our estate.
Yeah. And then one thing I will say about the wines I had today, I was surprised at the tannins and the structure of the wines, which is something that may be different than a regular lower priced, maybe, DOC Montepulciano, because they're out there, they're approachable, they're drinkable, there's nothing wrong with them. But if you see the Colline Termane on the label, the DOCG, then you might be expecting something a little bit more fuller bodied. Like you said, that richness and that strength, but yet that elegance, but it's not going to be over the top, like let's say a Napa Cabernet or something like that. Is that what you're trying to get across?
But what makes the difference mainly is the work we do in the vineyard. Colline Termane, in the subzone of Colline, the DOCG Colline Termane, the maximum production per acre is 3.8 tons. So it's limited.
It's very small.
So our production per acre is lower than the rest of Abruzzo.
Okay.
And this happens naturally, but also because we want to concentrate the energies of our vines in a few bunches in order to have this structure in our glass.
So what we're talking about is we're taking very special care of the vines, making sure that they are pruned in a way that the bunches that do remain at harvest are getting all the energy from the vines, from the soil, and so they're going to be the most intense in flavor and color and tannic and phenolic ripeness and all that. And when do you harvest? What time of year do you normally harvest?
Montepulciano d'Abruzzo, generally since the middle of September till the end of October.
So that's just like kind of other areas in Italy, because for those of you that don't realize where Abruzzo is, if you're looking at Italy's boot, it's on the back of the knee.
Yes.
It's on the back of the knee there. And you're between the sea and the Apennine chain there, the mountains. So you can actually see Gran Sasso from where you are, the highest point in the Apennine chain.
Absolutely, yes. Gran Sasso is the highest mountain of central Italy, and it's almost 10,000 feet high. And actually, in it is the southernmost glacier in Europe. And from the coast, from the beach, you can see the mountain. So
isn't that incredible?
Yes, in 30 miles, you go from 0 to 10,000 feet. And that means a lot for us in terms of microclimate, in terms of influence on our vines.
And you get the moderation from the sea.
Yes,
so
absolutely. Gran Sasso is a chain. So everything comes from the sea, remains in the Colline Termane because it's blocked by this chain.
So it gives kind of like a rain shadow also, or a protection of anything moving west on.
Exactly.
Moving east. I know the directions here.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you kind of gave me a little idea of how this shows up in the glass. I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite thing to eat with Montepulciano d'Abruzzo? Oh, excuse me. Colline Termane DOCG Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. What is your favorite thing to eat?
Lamb.
Lamb.
Yes.
That would be a great pairing. And how do you
lamb
grill
in every
Oh.
I had a few days ago I had a beautiful lamb burger.
Oh.
And would have been the best combination.
Oh, that's
but grilled lamb or stewed lamb or
Perfect. Perfect. Is there anything else you want to tell me about your winery, about Abruzzo, about what you love about it, or what you love about what you do?
It was a life and a job that came to me when I was 20, 23, 20, 25, but I didn't expect it very, very much. So now I can say that it was one of the best things that happened to me, because they gave me the opportunity to know about my family's history, my family's past. I can understand more now what is in the back mind of my father, in order to understand him better. So,
and you seem to have a lot of fun, and listeners, you can actually go to the website. It is at cerulispinozzi.it. Yes. There is an English translation as well. And there are some fun pictures of you doing some fun things in the vineyard, I believe. I think there's one of you at the beach.
Yes.
On the website as well. So you can and we'll take a picture here shortly. But I thank you so much for spending some time and for that beautiful presentation and sharing your wines with us today. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Steph, I think after Abruzzo, there's only one place left to go, right?
Sicily!
And I love this last conversation with Roberto Magnesi. Guys, if you're hanging into this point, this is a real treat. This is a diverse conversation because, like the wines and the styles in the island of Sicily, the wines are just so full of character. And Roberto is also full of character. He is the quality control director at Cantina Florio Marsala, but he started his life as a chemistry major. So we're just going to get right into the interview, and let's just call this the dessert, shall we? I'm here with Roberto Magnesi, quality control director at Cantina Florio Marsala. He is, get this, a chemistry graduate of the University of Messina, and his master's thesis was study of the polyphenolic components of Sicilian wine through high-performance liquid chromatography and mass spectrometry, otherwise known as HPLC-MS. It combined his two passions, wine and chemistry. In 2003, he began his career with wine at the historic Florio Marsala winery, and since then, the team there has become his second family. In 2009, he was appointed Director of Research and Development for Duca di Salaparuta Group, which encompasses Florio, Corvo, and Duca di Salaparuta. At Florio, Magnesi has been entrusted to establish a state-of-the-art microbiological chemical laboratory to support the winemaking team's professional know-how. And with me again is Lars. You heard his voice earlier, and he's going to do a little translating because my Italian is not what it should be. And to hear these two together in the room, I have to tell you, it's spectacular. So we hope you enjoy this. I'm going to start by asking Roberto about his chemistry major because he was born in Messina, went to university in Messina, but he loved wine. So he probably figured, why not do a master's thesis on this polyphenolic components of Sicilian wine through everything I mentioned earlier, which was way more interesting than mine. If you've ever discovered it out there, it was on IT or information technology outsourcing. Although I did drink a lot during my master's thesis, I have to ask, allora, Roberto, what were the findings of your thesis?
I have to say that the work that I did was all based on Nero d'Avola,
okay,
which is an indigenous cultivar of Sicily. Mm-hmm. It's ours. And still today, it's one of the works that a lot of researchers go after, subject of a lot of studies. I was able to differentiate it based on its color, its chemical structure, this cultivar compared to others, and I was able to show it many times in Sicily. Sicily is a territory that's got a lot of expressions, a lot of faces, and that's why this is a true geographic indication. It encompasses in itself the real terroir of our land. Territories of different altitudes, different attitudes, different areas. So we have the western area of Marsala with very soft rolling hills which face the sea. In the summer, they're almost burned by that Scirocco hot wind that comes up from Africa. Then we have the part built around Etna, which in itself represents a DOC, which shows the volcanic character reflected in the grapes, where Nerello Mascalese really finds its natural environment. Then we have Jesi, around where Duca di Sella Peruta has an estate, where Nero d'Avola really finds its maximum expression, an aromatic expression, very different compared to the soils that face the channels, the canals of Sicily, near Gela or near Avola. It's a land that manages to express itself best. The vines themselves are a little bit like the Sicilian people. They don't adapt to the territory, but they manage to survive the territory and almost change the territory themselves a little bit. They express their best character, giving their best peculiarities, their best quirks. Let me explain that a little bit better. The same Grillo grape, which is the base for the best Marsalas, has an expression.
So it's a white grape.
Bianca.
And it's indigenous from the part around Marsala, but it's also known around the world for its characteristics as a white wine that can be very vegetal in its expression. The cloning and its ability to adapt itself to different territories demonstrates from the Pirandello point of view. Wow, from the Pirandello point of view, the expressions of each and every grape. Nero d'Avola is not just one. There are a myriad of Nero d'Avola based on the territory where it's growing.
Clones?
Clones.
Okay. See, that's interesting. And that's why I asked that. So, of course, I'm going to edit that down a little bit. But grazie, that was
fascinating.
Beautiful, fascinating. And so we got a little tour of Sicily.
Yeah. So you have to know that
La Sicilia è una terra di
Sicily is a land of domination.
Yes.
Noi siamo abituati.
We're used to being dominated, but in reality, we're used to accept diversity, which is something different than to be a subject. We adapt, we take the best, and in an entropic way, we give a synergy to that domination.
And it appears in the food, nella cucina,
si vede nella cucina, in the market, fish market, in the fruit market, but also in all the varietals of wines that we produce. In Sicily, we have 23 DOCs.
23 DOCs. That's fascinating. We're going to talk about one of them right now specifically. We're going to talk about the Marsala. Back to Florio, where Roberto works. It has a history dating way back to 1833. And what we learned today is that when Vincenzo Florio founded it, he was the first Sicilian to start making Marsala, because before that it was the English.
Yes, Woodhouse Whitaker. The third is Vincenzo Florio.
Okay.
He wasn't a true Sicilian.
Okay.
He was born in Calabria.
Okay.
Just across the straits. He's a Calabrian. He moved to Marsala for other reasons. His uncle had business in the sailing industry. He had the courage, the curiosity to understand the potential of how interesting Marsala could become. Just think about in the first 8 years, he didn't earn anything. Didn't turn a profit. Because the market was saturated and it was complicated. It was an Anglo-Saxon market and it was controlled by the Anglo-Saxons. In reality, time proved him right, and he was one of the greatest innovators. Today we had the pleasure of tasting the Targa Florio, but Targa Florio has a very unique name. Targa was the first automobile race, an international automobile race that started in 1840. So think about cars then. Where the people who participated were guys' names with like Ferrari, Nuvolari, and another 18 professional drivers from around the world. So Vincenzo Florio offered the boats to bring the cars over to Sicily for the race.
And so we've actually gone to car racing, and I believe that's the first time this has entered the podcast, which is the thing about Florio. Like, so we tasted these amazing Marsala, and we tasted an Amaro as well, which I absolutely love. And we've got a little bit of a factoid about that in a minute. But also with Florio had many different interests. And one of them, which I thought was interesting, was in chemistry.
So Vincenzo Florio had a chemical intelligence. That is, he managed to translate what wine needed. He was a precursor. He was sort of like Duca Enrico, who was the original owner of Corvo. They went to study abroad to bring back to Sicily innovation. But in reality, their studies became innovation. The man, Vincenzo Florio, was one of the greatest innovators of all of Italy. He invested not only in wine, navigation, sulfur, agriculture. He put a logical structure to the local agriculture. He did it in such a way that Marsala became a place known for its agriculture and respected for its agriculture, as opposed to Mazzara del Vallo, a town nearby, which specialized in the sea, in fishing, and seafood.
It goes to show that Florio doesn't produce just Marsala. Florio has Pesito de Pantelleria, and Malvasia della Lipari from Salina. fortified wines, Licoroso, and anche bollicine. Spumante.
Moscato.
Sparkling Moscato.
Si tratta da
We're talking about a Moscato. It's a sort of partially fermented Moscato.
8 gradi.
8% alcohol.
Okay.
80 grams of sugar. Very rich in terpenes.
That's the chemistry
A
part,
true-
guys.
A true expression.
Terpeni sono le molecole
Terpenes are the molecules that
ricordano l'arancia,
remind us of oranges, citrus, lemon.
quindi molto Sicilia.
So a lot about Sicily.
Right.
Very Sicilian.
Very Sicilian. And of course, Passito di Pantelleria, we might have mentioned before, is made from the grape they call zabibo. Zabibo being an Arab word for grape, uva.
Sì,
Okay.
It was a volcanic grape, an extremely volcanic territory,
devastato,
devastated by the winds, and in this area full of very rich clay soils.
allevamento.
With the head training, the DOC regulations protect it, protect the concept of the drying of the grape, the appassimento, just like Marsala.
E il passito
The passito follows almost an artisan production process. And this gives life that an organoleptic
Difficile.
experience that's unique,
difficile sbagliare.
very difficult to mistake it, very difficult to not understand or
Rispetto
to
a
mistake a
un
passito di
passito
Pantelleria from a passito from somewhere else.
And for those of you that may not remember, Pantelleria is a tiny little island off of Sicily that's actually closer to Tunisia, I believe, than Sicily itself.
It's its own island.
Tiny.
I've been there many times, and,
Oh.
and the
È quello
sensation
di
that you
essere
try
fuori dall'Italia
is
è
to
un mondo
be
a parte.
you're outside of Italy. It's a whole other
Anche le
world.
regole che gestiscono
Even the
l'isola,
rules that
anche gli
they
isolani
the islanders themselves, you have to think about something. You have to
sono
imagine
abituati
something.
a vivere
They're used
almeno
to live at least 9 months under the sun. The tourist is hosted in those few winter
comunità
months.
chiusa.
So it's almost a closed community, and they make their own rules.
As we all
È
should.
mistica.
It's almost mystic. It's almost mystic.
That in and of itself adds a little bit of mystique to that wine. So I know we've mentioned it before. Something else we learned today about Marsala, and you guys, if you're old like me and you were cooking with the stuff off the grocery store shelves in the 80s, that's not what we're talking about here. There are 50 different types of authentic Marsala. The types include Vergine, Superiore e
È
Fine.
fine.
Okay. And qual è le differenze?
So we have to make this distinction. Marsala could be either
Semplice.
simple Marsala, like Marsala Vergine, a grape that's part of the DOC, Grillo, Catarato,
Damaschino.
Damaschino, and alcohol, obviously.
Oh.
Or it can be what they call a Marsala Conchatto, which means added to or dressed up, like the golden Marsala, which allows you to add a product called Mistella, which is must, sort of
Dall'alcol.
blocked by alcohol.
Okay.
So must with alcohol added to stop it from fermenting. Or you can have an amber Marsala,
Aggiunto non solo di mistella, ma
which
anche di
you
mosto
add not
cotto.
only Mistella, but you also add cooked wine must. You can also distinguish the Marsala between by the years in which it has been aged. So you have Marsala Fine. All you need is 1 year of the
Il
aging
legno.
in wood, especially oak. And then you have Riserva, at least 2 years of aging. Superiore must be 2 years.
Riserva 4 anni.
Reserva must be 4 years.
O il Marsala
Or
Vergine
you have the Vergine Marsala,
5 anni.
which is 5 years of aging.
Stravecchio 10 anni.
Stravecchio, which is 10 years. And then you can have distinctions based on the sugar content. You have dry Marsala, from 0 to 40 grams of sugar. Marsala semi-dry, which is from 40 to 100. And sweet Marsala, which is over 100 grams of sugar per liter.
So what we need here is a matrix. So if you're looking at a bottle of Marsala, you very well could have, it doesn't matter. Vergine doesn't necessarily mean dry. Doesn't necessarily mean Ambra. Doesn't necessarily mean Rubino. Come Rubino Marsala è fatto?
Rubino
Fatto.
è,
So Rubino is a red type of Marsala.
Non l'ho visto.
70%.
è difficile, è raro.
It's rare to find it.
Okay.
70% of the blend is made with red grapes.
Nero
Nero
d'Avola,
d'Avola.
Nero d'Avola
Terricolo.
and Nerella Muscalese. 30% could be white grapes, but it must be the DOC grapes.
And
We have to
Zolea
remember that.
anche.
Tutte le uve.
All the grapes which go into the base of Marsala
Devono
wines
essere
must
coltivate.
be cultivated in a very specific area, which includes the entire province of Trapani, including the islands.
And one thing we did ask Roberto is, who obviously loves Sicilian wine enough to write a master's thesis on it, is what other wines and beverages he loves, as well as some of his pairings. So let's just take a listen to that before we wrap up.
Liqueurs, so grappa.
Le grappe. Siamo pure bravi a fare le grappe, devo dire che...
We like grappa.
Yes.
The pleasure of grappa.
Grappa di
Grappa.
Moscato.
Grappa of Moscato grape. Great expression of grappa
of Moscato in Sicily. Florio also produces
una grappa di Duque Enrico, una
a
grappa di
grappa
Nero
from
d'Avola.
Duke Enrico, a grappa made from Nero d'Avola
Nero
grapes.
d'Avola,
It's some of the best pumice
selezionate durante la vendemmia.
selected during the harvest after the grapes are
che
crushed
danno alla luce
that bring light
un prodotto
to a product
molto particolare, non varicato,
that is very unique. It doesn't spend any time in wood,
esprime tanta sicilianità.
and it really expresses an amazing amount of Sicilianness.
Sicilianness. Okay, speaking of Sicilianness, hai un cibo preferito con marsala?
So marsala is great because you can pair it to so many different
Si
foods.
può abbinare pure al fumo.
You can even pair into the vices like smoking. Marsala and a cigar is a wonderful pairing. Dried fruit,
Sì, qualche formaggio.
some cheeses. You can have it, take it as an aperitif,
Può
little
essere
chilled.
assaggiare dolci.
You can have it with dessert. Some
Dal
people have it
primo-
with regular. They'll take marsala throughout the whole meal.
Oh,
The great unique character of
E di
marsala
avere diverse tipologie.
is to have many different types.
Con un buon marsala vergine.
So with a good marsala
si può fare a
vergine,
tutto pasto.
you can have it throughout the meal. As long as you have it chilled, it'll never let you down.
so you can have marsala any time of day with any kind of food, all different kinds. Again, 50 different types of marsala. Con colazione e gelato.
Gelato si può fare.
Absolutely.
Come
With ice
palermitani.
cream, why not?
È vero,
So-
è vero, è vero.
So yeah, in Palermo,
dolce.
yeah. So I
With
was
the
I was
sweet marsala?
I was
Absolutely.
kidding about the breakfast wine, but in Palermo you can actually have a croissant with the gelato with your coffee for breakfast, and it is fantastic.
In the Sicilian trattorias,
C'è l'usanza
there's the habit
di offrire un
of
uovo
offering
sodo
a hard-boiled egg
Oh,
e
see.
il marsala.
and marsala. That's
Che
a
abbiamo
tradition
ereditato dal Settecento.
that we started in the 1700s when
Che
we had the
l'attuale
perpetual
marsale
wine.
vergine.
That what is really today the Virgine marsala.
Era il marsale di allora.
It was the marsala of that time.
Vino estremamente ossidato.
Wine that was extremely oxidized, that gave you the opportunity every day to pair something to an egg, which an egg is not an easy food to pair wine to.
No. Last question. Do you have a funny or embarrassing wine story?
Abbiamo
Obviously, I think we all have an
un'imbarazzante
embarrassing story about wine.
storia. Ovviamente è un'imbarazzante
Or
storia.
you're not living. So when I was involved in the tasting,
Che purtroppo non ho preparato io.
that unfortunately I didn't set it up.
Sono arrivato
I got there,
e 3 dei 4 bicchieri che avevo
and 3 of the 4 glasses in front
durante
of
la
me,
degustazione sapevano di tappo.
to me, they were all
Non
corked.
se ne è accorto nessuno.
Nobody realized it.
Non ho fatto un cenno.
I didn't realize
Hanno
it.
tutti apprezzato il vino.
Everybody thought the wine was nice.
Oh, nice. That is a great story. Grazie molto,
No,
Roberto.
grazie a te.
Thank
Grazie.
you so much for the interview. And Lars, thank you so
Io
much for the
grazie
translation.
Lars.
I
My
can't
pleasure.
wait to hear this. This is going to be so much fun. Thank you both.
Lars
Grazie.
è l'espressione del mio cuore. Che riesce a...
And Roberto's English.
So he says
I don't know
Lars
about
is an
the expression
expression
of
of
his
his heart. It was so beautiful. Thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
Could you tell he loves grappa stuff?
You can tell that he just has a lot of love in his life, and I took like 2 pages of notes just on this interview alone. I think the listeners are going to love it. My favorite parts particularly were when he talks about how the vines are like the Sicilian people and describes that. I also really like the Pantelleria conversation, and then the pairings. That was hilarious.
You know, I thought it was so funny when he started bringing up Luigi Pirandello and Lars started giggling because this is what the presentation was like. Okay. So for those of you that were in the room, and I know there were some listeners in the room that we got to meet, and that was really cool. And I had some friends in the room, but it was so funny because Lars is doing real-time translation. You know, we tried to not do so much of that in this audio to keep you guys from getting confused. But a lot of times Lars would just kind of snicker. And at the end, I love how Roberto says that Lars is his heart, that Lars translates Roberto's heart.
Yes.
You know, it's almost like, so he calls it more of an interpreter. But what was really funny is he brings up Luigi Pirandello and Lars starts giggling. And I think I took this part of the audio out, but I talk about how I've read Luigi Pirandello and I've read these Sicilian stories. And I talked about this book that I actually read on a 13-hour train ride from Florence all the way down to the coast of Calabria, across the Strait of Messina, and then the train gets loaded into a boat, and then it comes out of the boat and then it went on to Palermo. And I read these 11 novelle, 11 novels, which are English on one side and Italian on the other.
Oh.
And so you can read the translations, but the stories are beautiful. And when he talked about Luigi Pirandello and the wines and how they all kind of come together in the Sicilian life, I definitely advise you guys to read some of that, because he did win the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1934. And there are at least 220 known short stories or plays that he's written throughout his life. And so if you want to get a feel and kind of the smell of the citrus and the feel for the Sicilian lifestyle, I definitely recommend checking that out. I will put that in the blog for you guys as well. But I think that was my favorite part, is when Lars was just sitting there shaking his head and giggling at the Luigi Pirandello references. I thought it was so cute.
That's good. I'll have to check out that book myself.
Yeah, I don't know if you could get your hand on this one, but they do. I'm sure you can find a few of his books, and there are his stories, and there's some really interesting stories that are relevant today, which I won't go into. But, you know, like I mentioned earlier, Steph, I didn't get to interview all the winemakers. There was just not enough audio time to do it. And we're kind of up against what I call editorial calendar Tetris right now. We're getting ready for conference, even though this airs after conference. But we got a lot going on right now. So I wanted to point out that Gabriele Pazzaglia, he is the cellar master at Banfi. And Steph, didn't you go there?
Yes, so I was there in 2016.
Yeah, I think Sharon kind of hooked you up with a visit there
did.
As well.
Yeah, Sharon McCarthy.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. So they all know Sharon. All the Banfi folks know Sharon. But this particular session was a deep dive into some geekery that, I mean, it was a geek fest. He dove into the Horizon Project. He talked about all the Sangiovese clones that they worked with starting 35 years ago. 650 clones of Sangiovese. Who knew there were that many?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they narrowed it down to 3, and now there's a final 3, and we got to taste them all. And then there's a whole book that they gave us on all the science that goes into their Horizon Project, the wood that they pick out themselves, that they go to France to pick out themselves. They toast their own wood. I mean, this was a totally different seminar than all the rest of them. And I have like pages of questions and pages of notes for him, but there was just no way time-wise we could make that happen, even over Skype. And then, of course, Steph, did you see the whale?
The whale?
At Banfi?
No.
Brunella, the whale? Well, apparently they dug up a whale carcass on the property there, and they named her Brunella. And I didn't know if that was something that you got to hear about or see when you were there. But but that was an interesting part of. There's a picture of it in the book here too. But the other presenter that I didn't get to interview, that was Andrea Sartori. He's a family proprietor of Sartori di Verona, and of course that was all about Appassimento and Amarone. And the history here was fascinating because this winery's been in his family for, I want to say, 4 generations. And he told a story about how pre-war vintages of some of the wines were destroyed during the German occupation, but he was still able to preserve, I want to say, about 100 bottles of white Recioto. So we'll put all their bios, all their contact information in there. Again, seriously, that was all we had time for. But, you know, Cru Artisan College will be back next year, and hopefully it will be in a city near you.
Yes. I hope to. And you can usually take a short flight to one of these places too. You never know. It might be a quick, like the guy that you met. That's one of our listeners that flew out to Denver, right?
Yeah, he came from Miami.
Yeah.
And
that's
Scott.
not quick.
Shout out
That's
to
a commitment.
Yeah, I think they call him Scooter. Shout out to Scott. I think they call him Scooter. But he actually flew to Miami. It was like a 4-hour direct flight to Denver. You know, flew out that morning, landed, that morning, drove a car over, and it was so cool. So yeah, we met one of our listeners, so we'll definitely give him a shout out as well. But we should get to shout outs because this is a long episode, Steph.
Yes, more shout outs. Go for it, Val.
Wow. Thank you to the Banfi Vintners and the Cru Artisan College and all of the people who made this happen. Lars, of course, the brainchild behind this, Alberto Lazzarino, Enrico Cerulli, Roberto Magnesi, Andrea Sartori, Gabriele Pazzaglia. And again, we could not get to all the winemakers with the mics this year, but we did love everything that you guys presented and poured for us. The Banfi and the Somm Journal crew. I got to meet Jabs, and if you read Somm Journal, you know who she is. Sarah, Dan, Jacob, as well as Maurizio, who you've heard on this show from the Wine Scholar Guild, and not to mention the Fritz Noble School of Hospitality Management at Denver University. What a beautiful campus, Steph. You've been there, right?
Yeah, I was there for an evening event one time.
Stunning setting. We'll put a picture of that in the blog as well. I had no idea it even existed, so I learned a lot. And one more shout out again to our listener, Scott from Miami, who sat across from me at dinner Saturday night. It was cool meeting you. We got a picture. He's a hardcore podcast junkie and listens to Wine to Five as well as Whiskey Cast. So we'll link everything up for you in the blog, but we need to move on, Steph.
Yeah, because we have a shout out to our show sponsor, Weekly Tasting.
Weekly Tasting is powered by Wines Till Sold Out, so you know the wines are hand-selected by experts and they signify quality. We know it because we've got to taste them. You learn about wine by tasting it, and that's what makes Weekly Tasting shipments fun, and it's also the perfect gift-giving experience, so keep that in mind.
And you can go to your listener page at weeklytasting.com/W25 to sign up and get started, or just go to our webpage and click on the link on the right-hand corner. And to our patrons, our Reserva Superiore supporter, thank you, Robin from Girls Gone Grape. And thank you, Auntie. He is our Reserva supporter in Georgia. Our tenacious tasters, Jeff E. from the award-winning We Like Drinking podcast, Sebastian of Sassy Italy Tours, who I think is going to love this episode, Jen in Maryland, David and Lisa in Illinois, Anne-Marie in Virginia. It's not 5 o'clock and we don't care, listeners. Meg in South Dakota, Clay in Arizona, John Andrew and Iswani in California, Chantel in Ontario, Canada, Mary Lou in Pennsylvania, who I am so excited we need to catch up with her since she's doing all that traveling. Kathy in Georgia, Chris, Janet, and Diane in Colorado, who we're going to be seeing next week. Steve and Renee in Illinois, Kathy in Tennessee, Ashley in North Carolina, Sean in Ohio. And what about our tastemaker listeners, Val?
Our tastemaker listeners are all over the place. David's in Scotland, Carol's in Kentucky, Karen's in California, Chip and Katie are in Pennsylvania, Serena's in New York, and then we have Danielle, and she's incognito. And you can do that. You can support us and be incognito, and you can go to our Patreon page for details, patreon.com/wine-to-5podcast on how to be entered into our monthly drawing. You get exclusive content. You get swag. And speaking of,
it's time for the August drawing, and a lucky patron will be picked and get sent a cool gift from WTSO.
I love that. So depending on where you are, most of you, if you're in the States, I'm going to pull my phone off the charger here. If you're in the States, you'll get a $25 gift certificate to Wines Till Sold Out, unless you're in Alaska, Arkansas, Alabama, Kentucky, Utah, or Texas, in which case you will get swag, which will be like hats, t-shirts, wine carriers, wine openers, wine pens, and bottle stoppers from our generous sponsor, Wines Till Sold Out. Here's my randomize. I have it set from 0 to 180, and I'm going to put up so Steph can see it.
Oh, it's pink. 97.
97. Okay, so I love the colors. The colors are awesome.
That's
Let me pull up the spreadsheet. 97 is Sean M.
Sean
in Ohio, right?
Sean in Ohio, congratulations. You are the August winner. So thank you for your support, and we will get in touch with you.
You know, by the time this airs, we will have met Sean at the Society of Wine Educators Conference.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
I know.
But between our weekly episodes, you can find our goodies on our website and find us on the social spaces at Wine25. So until next week, cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Wine to Five podcast. Be sure to check us out at Facebook/WineTWO5 and tune in next week for more fun and useful sip tips.